All right, it appears that we are live now. So I'll get everything set. All right, well, welcome. Thank you to everyone that's joining us. It's an odd time of the day to talk about self-care, but also probably important because this is the time where I start falling asleep at work. Just kidding. But we want to go ahead and talk about a very important topic. Like I mentioned, self-care. We have really exciting guests with us today, and we're going to go ahead and introduce them and go from there. So with us today, we have Samantha Manahan. She graduated from LP in 2014 and transferred from IVCC in 2015 to attend NIU. She graduated actually May 2020 of this semester, so she survived online learning and COVID and managed to graduate, so kudos to her. And she graduated with her Bachelor's of Science in Marketing with an emphasis in digital media and is currently working towards a master's at Northern. To practice self-care, Samantha takes her dog on walks, listens to podcasts, reads, writes in her journal, and schedules dedicated time to spend with friends. Welcome, Samantha.
Thank
And,
you.
and we also have Liza Burr. So Liza just graduated from IVCC this May with 2 degrees, an associate in arts and an associate in science. She'll be transferring to Northern Illinois University to continue her undergraduate work in communicative disorders. I could need some help with communication. Liza practices self-care by running to clear her mind and prepare for her next race, rotating her workouts to challenge herself, listening to upbeat music, writing poetry and journaling, and occasional late night ice cream decompression sessions with friends. So thank you so much for being here, Liza.
Thanks for having me.
Yay. So this is, if we were looking at all of the episodes that we've created under the Ask Network, this is the 9th. So we're very excited to cover a very important topic, especially in the day of all sorts of things that are going on that influence our self-care routine. And we kind of put that to the side. So again, we're very, very fortunate to have 2 alumni join us today. Before I forget, I need to introduce myself. My name is Azrat Loveland, and I serve as the Assistant Director for Admissions, Records, and Transfer Services. And I have the Director of Admissions with us too, Quentin Overocker.
Yeah, hey everybody. So I am Quentin Overocker. I'm the Director of Admissions, Records, and Transfer Services, and proudly an IVCC alum. Obviously, Azrat and I, in our roles, we're committed to helping students explore their educational and career options. And this is just such a treat to be able to do this today and work with some successful former students. So let's start off this self-care conversation and just get the flow going. So first things first, Liza and Samantha, and Liza, we'll go to you first. Why did you choose IVCC?
So for those of you who have watched a couple of these Ask Network things, I've told like part of my story. Basically, when I graduated high school, I felt a lot of pressure to go away to a 4-year university. Both my brothers went to 4-year universities, and my parents both graduated from a 4-year. So it just kind of felt like the norm for my family. My family didn't necessarily like put that pressure on me. It was just kind of myself, like thinking that's what I had to do. So I went to a 4-year, and about a month and a half in, my mental health was just at a very low point, and I knew I needed to just leave because I just couldn't, I wasn't sleeping, and like just all around bad situation. So I came home in October, and I was like, how is this happening to me? Because I loved school my whole life. I kept good grades and everything. I was involved. And so when I came home in October, IVCC was like, oh yeah, come talk to us. Like, we have a plan. And I was like, oh, good, because I have no plan, because this was not what I expected would happen. So basically, I chose IVCC because I hit that point where I really was lost and didn't know what else to do. And they were there for me, and they were like, yeah, we don't care like what your story is. Like, we just want to help you reach your future goals. And so that was something that just really was helpful.
So for me choosing IVCC, Liza and I have very similar but also very different experiences. Um, School was never for me. I never, got the best grades. I was never truly 100% in with my high school academics. And so I wasn't really sure that college was for me. And so at first, IVCC hadn't even crossed my mind, just for not wanting to go to school. And, also all of my friends had been leaving and for their universities. And so I needed to move too because I was ready to start my life, so to speak. And so like Liza's story, much after my first semester away, my mental health worsened and I was forced to move home. And IVCC was having, I think it was a career fair at the time. And my mom was like, okay, we're going. Like, you need to be introduced to this. You need to kind of do something. Because at that time I had just kind of been sitting at home trying to figure out what was next. So I very hesitantly attended the event at IVCC, and I began talking to counselors, faculty, and I ran into some very familiar faces from high school. And the professors were always willing to work with me, counselors wanting to talk to me, and having those like familiar friends and faces around really put my anxiety at ease. And so it was at that point that I knew IVCC was where I needed to be in order to figure out what my passions were and to receive the amazing education at an affordable cost. And although I didn't think IVCC was initially for me, it became one of the best choices I ever made.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm kind of upset that I didn't get to work with you, Samantha, but I cherish the opportunity to work with Liza and really any of the students that do get to experience IVC. So IVCC, wow, I need help too with communication. So we'll transition into the next big question. And we all know that college is a very exciting time. And it can also be stressful, and being there and having these expectations and trying to figure out, what do I want out of life is kind of, it's one of those things where you feel like you have to figure it all out, but you don't. So that's where self-care comes into place. And so I'm curious, why do you think self-care as a student is important, especially right now during this unique time?
So for me, I think self-care as a student is just like so important, just because of what I've gone through in the last 2 years, um, with my own mental health and everything. And even before this whole pandemic happened, I still thought it was like a really important thing to take care of your mental health, because we live in a world with constant comparison on social media and just constant technology and wanting instant gratification. But I've had to learn that, like, that cheesy saying where like good things take time, like that's really true. Like you're like right now I'm actually experiencing it, because I just transferred to NIU and I'm have all these new syllabi and all these new teachers and all these new, literally everything in my life is new. I've done a complete 360. And then it doesn't help that we're in a pandemic, because I'm trying to meet people through Snapchat and Instagram, and it's just weird. So I think it's really important, because at the end of the day, you're the only person that knows what's best for you, and you're the only person that can really pick you back up. And prior to this pandemic, I thought, self-care was important just because, like working out gives you some endorphins and like makes you feel better, and it's a good like stress relief and everything. But now it's just even more important, especially if you're watching from home, or if you're a transfer student watching from your dorm now, and it's like you're living in the dorm and that's so much different. Like, it's okay to put yourself first. I have to remind myself every single day to do that, because I think quite often we all want to please everyone else, and we need to remind ourselves that we have to take care of ourselves first. And I think that's really the only way that you can truly be successful, is if you put yourself first and what you need first.
Yeah, so I agree with Liza, especially with the pandemic and the social distancing guidelines. Social media can be very toxic, especially when it's your only form of human interaction. For me, self care is so important because I find it to be a form of practicing self love. And the more you prioritize yourself and take care of your needs, the more you learn and the better you feel about yourself, which in return can positively affect other parts of your life, like your relationships, your ability to network and finish your coursework or extracurriculars, and much more. So, I guess in a nutshell, I think self care is important because it's a core part of living a well balanced life.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks, Liza. Those were great answers. So we kind of moving on. We kind of touched on this, a couple things you guys do at the start of this recording, but I'd like to hear you guys say it in your own words and give some examples. So everybody has their own daily self-care rituals, but oftentimes it's so automatic and it's routine that we don't even think about them. Especially once you establish a routine, you just kind of get into it and you keep doing it, and you're not even aware of what you're doing. So what are some examples that you guys use, or what are some examples of self-care that you guys practice? So Sam, we'll start with you.
So for me, caffeine is a must. Not only because it, gives me energy and kind of re-energizes my entire life, but also because of the flavor, and it's kind of just like that first sip of coffee, like it hits home. So I always make time for my daily dose of caffeine. Another daily ritual I have is walking and playing with my dog, Milo. So he's always seeking affection and loves playtime. So this allows me to get fresh air and walk away from whatever may be overwhelming to me in the moment. And then I also have a journal called Today I Affirm, and it's a book made to nurture self-care, and it gives you different prompts and helps guide you along your journey of self-care from an emotional standpoint. And so like it does this by asking 1 to 2 questions on each page, and then it always ends with, so today I affirm. So like as an example, the first page on day 1 started with 2 questions. What am I today, and who do I want to become? So it takes that feeling and puts it into some like an actionable step. So you can say, what am I today? Today I'm feeling anxious because of A, B, and C. And then the next question is, who do I want to become? You take those feelings of, okay, well, today I'm feeling anxious, but I want to be strong tomorrow. So then at the end, you can always end it with, today I affirm to do this actionable step, as in making a promise to yourself. And that's really helped me from like an emotional standpoint to be able to really reflect on how I'm feeling and how I can get to where I want to be.
Wow, I really like that. I feel like I need to start one of those books now, or get one or something. I agree with you on coffee. Ezra and Quentin know, like, if I don't walk in with Starbucks or coffee or something, like, it's not good. So, coffee is definitely a big thing for me too. But the other really big form of self-care for me is working out. I try to work out at least once a day, usually 6 times a week, so every day but Sunday because you need a rest. But working out has just always been in my life. My parents were active, my brothers were active, and I ran cross country in high school. So just keeping that up, even something as simple as a walk with a friend, especially during this pandemic, like I've gone on so many walks. I think I know my neighborhood better than I've ever known it before. Like the town of Ottawa, like I got you now because I've taken so many walks. I like to run. Sometimes I just do like some HIIT workouts, which is high intensity interval training. But even like yoga, I've seen people post about yoga, and like that can be just as helpful. Just getting up and moving just a little bit is really helpful because you release some endorphins. And sometimes when I don't feel like working out, because I have those days often, I just like to listen to like Taylor Swift. She's my favorite right now. Maybe not Folklore. That's a little sad, but like the album Lovers, pretty hype. So it's got some good stuff in there. And then I also just like journal how I'm feeling. And I haven't done this recently, but I probably should. Um, I used to take a sticky note and write down one good thing that happened to me every single day, even if it was just like I laughed today with my friends. And I put them in a jar. And then at the end of the year, I was able to get 365 like good things that happened to me, because even if your day, like, it's raining, you're late, you get the red light, and just everything's just falling apart, there's still like one good thing that happens to you. And I think it's really important to always try to recognize that, because we can always find good.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I am totally going to throw a curveball right now. Quentin, what are some examples of things that you do for self-care? I think it's important that we hear it from a male perspective.
So I would second what Liza had said about exercise. I think it's really, really important. And I mean, scientific studies have shown time and time again that just being active, exercise in any shape or fashion, whatever you're into, is super helpful. For me, it clears the mind. It's a good stress reliever. If I don't, I can kind of feel like the anxiety building up in my neck and jaw muscles and all that sort of stuff. So that's really big. I have been trying to I've been trying to stay pretty consistent with meditation, and that's really, really helpful. Although what I'll say is, once you kind of start down that road, really the first things you kind of notice are how terrible you are at meditating. So I'm hoping to get past that hump pretty quickly. Another thing that I do not do very well, but I need to get much, much better at, is carving out time for yourself. And so, it's both Sam and Liza kind of mentioned it in sort of peripheral ways, but whatever it is that you enjoy doing, you need to stop and realize, like, okay, I need to, whether it's practicing self-care rituals, whether it's exercising, whether it's just staring at a wall or watching TV or whatever. You guys mentioned social media earlier and just the hectic pace of life. One of the things, probably the most helpful thing I do for myself, is if I get up super early, I sit out on the porch in the morning and I either just read or just kind of stare off into space. And so, yeah, it's that, it's really that giving time to yourself. And so, right, in keeping with that, what do you do, Azurette? I want to hear about that.
Well, first of all, I'm going to enroll into Liza's and Samantha's class, and I'll maybe think about your practices. But it's interesting hearing your guys' answers, because I think we put too much pressure on ourselves already. I mean, just thinking like, oh, I don't do this good enough or whatever. But it's important to know that, like, you need to take it easy on yourself. And, if you help a friend, think about the way you help a friend. You want to help yourself. And so I'm trying to remind myself about really a lot of that kind of thing, of like, be patient. But yoga is my go-to. If I can connect my breathing with my movements, I feel like I know what's going on in my head. But that matcha life is also a really sweet treat of self-care, thinking that I'm taking that time out of my day to like treat myself. And I don't know if that's actually healthy, but caffeine is certainly one of those things that get me pretty hyped and excited. So yoga and caffeine, and I like to do a dash of meditation, but like Quentin mentioned, you all of a sudden notice that your mind's wandering and they're like, wait a minute, I'm not meditating. So it's interesting, and it's so important during this time, especially with everything we're trying to juggle. So we'll go ahead and transition to the next question. And it kind of, I feel like a lot of these questions sound similar, but I think they have a twist in them. So I'm curious what you guys think. What does self-care mean to you? And it can mean all sorts of different things. If you look at it in a textbook, I don't know, whatever. So what do you guys think?
So real quick, I just want to say I also am very terrible at meditating. So I feel you guys there. It's so hard. But self-care to me, it's realizing when I need to say no when I'm overwhelmed. It's going on runs or making myself go do 10 jumping jacks even if I don't want to. It's like sometimes I think in college especially we get so like stressed out during the week that we're like, oh, we'll just do it Saturday. But sometimes like I need to just take that Saturday for myself and just do like literally nothing and just watch some Netflix, eat some ice cream. I don't know, like self-care, it's just reminding myself that like this is like one of the biggest things. And literally Ezra, I think he reminded me of this like today. And I know my mom has told me a lot this week because it's been NIU's first week of classes. That like this is your life and it's your timeline. And like I think Samantha probably can relate to this. Like it doesn't, we all like live in this world where it's like you go to college for 4 years and you need to fit into that perfect little 4-year box. But it's just, I'm learning every day, like, who cares about the 4-year box? Like, do it at your own pace so that you can take care of you because just because someone else might graduate, you know, in 3 years or 4 years and you take, you know, 8 years, you still come out with the same degree. And who knows if they even got a job until the same time you graduated. So I think that's something else that's really hard to like understand. And when Ezra said that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, I am definitely guilty of that. And I think it's something that we all do. And so really you just have to remind yourself that like it's your life, your timeline, and nobody else, it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing, even though that's hard to remember.
So it took me a long time to figure out what self-care was. And when I say a long time, I mean, I still to this day struggle with what self-care means. And I got most of my definition of what I'm going to tell you from years of going to therapy and talking to someone and having them relay what it means to take care of yourself. So to me, self-care means showing up for yourself every day, finding what you need mentally, physically, or emotionally, and handling it in the best way you see fit. So if you're dealing with burnout, learning to take a step back, feeling overwhelmed from a hard class, you know, accepting it and taking that step to ask for help. Struggling with your physical appearance, maybe join a workout class or buy a new pair of shoes, because I know as the three of you had mentioned, working out is your way of dealing with, you know, self-care and kind of how you get to that mental health space. It's not mine. You'll probably never find me in a gym. I hate sweating. I hate running. Like I've accepted that that is me. So while you work out for your physical appearance, I'll buy myself a good fitting pair of jeans. So that is my form of, my definition of self-care.
I love it.
Yeah, thanks for that. So we've talked about what you guys do. We've talked about what it means, and you know, the rut I sometimes find myself in is I can know all day long what I should be doing. It's a whole separate matter to actually do it. So with that, I'd be curious to know from you guys, what resources do you guys utilize to foster self-care and remember to take time for yourself? So, you know, technology is all pervasive and it's bad in a lot of ways, but there's also some good things about technology, or maybe there's some just good practices that we can look to help us remember what we need to remember. So what do you guys do? And Sam, we'll start with you.
So I put everything in my planner, from medication dates to workout classes. I like to do time blocking for my schedule. So that's like if you have work from 7 to 8, you block that off and then you kind of go from there. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, but that way it ensures that I'm doing things like hanging out with my friends or taking time for my dog, or even myself if I want to read a book. So that way I can just make sure that my schedule is organized so that there's a little bit of prioritizing myself. I also, when doing homework, I like to put timers on. So for an hour, I will work on a subject, especially if I hate it. Sometimes I'll move the timer to like 30 minutes because I just don't want to focus on something that I don't like. And then I'll give myself either a 15 or a half hour break. And during that break, I'll either get up and walk around, I'll get a drink, I'll lay in my bed and scream into my pillow, depending on how well my academics are going. Just kind of depends on the emotion in the moment. But I also then, I have a great support system. So I rely heavily on those around me too, to kind of help pick me up. They kind of can tell when things are becoming overwhelming by like my emotions or how I approach things. I'm definitely a talker. So if I'm not talking, a lot of people are going to know that something's up. And then I kind of, I don't want to say I rely on them, but having them there is just amazing.
Yeah, so I agree with the planner. My planner is like my best friend, and I like lost it one time and like had a full on like I was like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world, and people were like, it's just a planner, and I was like, no, my life is in there. So I definitely write everything down in my planner, and I like that Sam mentioned that she would like put a timer on like doing homework. I definitely do that too, especially when it's like classes I don't like, because it's just like, okay, I only have to do this for an hour. So we're going to work really hard for an hour and then we get to do something fun. Another way or another resource is I'm in like a couple different like online fitness accountability group things, and the people are always waiting for me to like post my workout of the day. And like sometimes if I don't post it by like a certain time, like one of my friends will text me and be like, hey, did you show up today? And I'll be like, no. And they're like, you better go do that. So that's keeps me accountable. And then like I said earlier, just writing down like one good thing that happens to me every day. I really like to like journal. I think journaling is really important because sometimes we don't really like to like talk to people about our struggles and like admit that we're facing those struggles. So I think just being able to write it down on paper can really help you out. And then, what was the last thing I was going to say? It's been such a long day and a long week. I can't remember, but it was good. So maybe I'll think of it. I don't know.
It'll pop up, I'm sure. So kind of talking about, okay, what are the resources that we have out there? Oftentimes people don't think it's an important thing to think about with self-care or taking care of yourself in any way. So I want to know what you guys, from your perspective, why it is something we need to get serious about, and that we should really encourage, the younger generation, and even, our parents or grandparents, because I don't know if we have the role models out there as much to show that what self-care looks like, or, you know, just taking that time. So I want to hear your guys' perspective. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I remember my other resource. It's the people around me. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. But my family and my friends are always there to like kind of pick me back up when things start to get rough. So I always encourage people to lean on people that they're close to. But anyway, other question. I think self-care needs to be taken seriously because the suicide rate among people ages 15 to 24 is the second leading cause of death. And I know some people might be like, wow, why would you say that on this? But like, it's because it's the truth. And like, I remember going through high school and just having like so many friends that were like, yeah, I just want to give up. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. And like, I hit that spot at one point in my life too. And I just feel like our society is in desperate need of making some changes with mental health. Um, my first semester at Ivy, I actually went to this webinar thing called Overcoming Loneliness. And apparently, the amount of college students seeking help for mental health issues right now is so high that there's not enough like professional like counselors on college campuses to meet those needs. And I think that that is just like really heartbreaking. Um, Also, Generation Z is the loneliest generation on the planet, which I think has a lot to do with social media and being on our phones all the time. And I think that far too often we spend so much time on our phones, or like when we're in the presence of others, we're on our phones instead of actually being with those people. And I think part of that's just like how we kind of grew up in this technological world, because our generation was like, I remember getting my first phone when I was like 12, and it was like so cool. And then like the iPhone, and then that just kind of like took over our lives. But I think a lot of us are really like we really really want that in-person connection, and like good like in-person connections. So I think that that's why it's so important to just like be honest with like those around you, because I'm pretty sure the people around you are probably feeling the same way that you are. When I first came to Ivy, my top priority was my mental health, and it was scary, but I just like would reach out to people, and then we would become friends, and I was just like really honest, like, hey, I'm kind of lonely, like, do you want to go do this, go do that, go get coffee? And just like slowly but surely, I made some of the best friends I've ever had, and I know so many great people now. So I just think it's really important to take time for yourself, put your phone down for a day, and just like step out of your comfort zone a little bit, and just like talk to that person that's in your class next to you, because they're probably like scared about the same exact thing that you are. And at least you could be scared together.
Yeah, so going off of Liza's answer, there was already a mental health crisis before the pandemic, and the numbers have only continued to rise with the social distancing regulations and even with the fight for equality. I think I'm very fortunate to live during a time that has so many advocates for mental health and equality. However, I know with all of these changes and big things happening, it can induce a lot of negative feelings, such as being overwhelmed, stressed, fearful. There's a lot of dealing with miscommunication and kind of the negative biases that the media can create with the social media. So self-care is so important because it allows ourselves to experience or understand our feelings and the vulnerability we have that can help us relate and connect with those around us who may be facing the same or different struggles. Taking care of yourself is to love yourself enough to understand that you need to put yourself first in order to be there for everyone else. I mean, I know it may seem selfish in the moment, but prioritizing your needs will help you keep your inner self calm and clear of negative thoughts or emotions.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Liza. They're both powerful answers, and we appreciate you sharing. So we've talked about technology, Liza. You hit upon smartphones and how easy it is to disappear into the screen for sure. And I think also what Sam and Liza, you guys are facing now is there's a whole sort of societal mindset of productivity in addition to that. So we often talk about goals and checking off the next goal, and as soon as you accomplish something you move on to the next thing. So with all of that, you guys are probably the busiest generation I think we've ever seen, and a lot of the expectations are placed upon you. And then I think unfortunately society kind of forces you guys to put those expectations on yourself, so that it's constantly go, go, go. So with that, sometimes it's easy to forget, our own basic physical and mental needs. So how do you check in? We talked earlier about, what do you use? What kind of maybe apps do you use, or what kind of, journaling practices do you use? But how do you check in with yourself and make sure that you're listening to what you need, whether, you're really anxious and you just need to relax for a bit, or you need to exercise, or you just need to stop and rest. So how do you guys do that? Liza, let's start with you.
So this is kind of a hard question, I feel like, just because sometimes I'm really good at like checking in with myself, and other times I just don't on purpose, usually when I'm having like a really bad day or something. But I think for me, the best way to check in with myself is just talking to people. I know when I was at Ivy, I would come talk to Ezrat, Quentin, and Gracelyn a lot. And just sometimes like vocalizing how you're feeling that day, or like what's been going on. Like I know this past week with classes starting, I've just been talking to my mom a lot about like, how overwhelming things are. And then from there, we're usually able to make kind of like a plan to navigate through those feelings.
Yeah, Liza's absolutely right. Being consistent with checking in on yourself can be really hard. I'm typically an emotionally intuitive person and can notice subtle changes in my demeanor throughout the day. And when I notice something, I kind of have a little pen and paper by my desk, and I just kind of write down, the emotion I was feeling. And then when I get home, I kind of take out the little sticky note, put it down, and then I'll have the emotion I was feeling, and then I'll kind of write about like why or what made me feel that way and how I can respond to the emotion. I know you were saying how our generation is just very busy, always on the go, and that's really how my brain works. I like to be doing and having actionable steps along the way, and always the what's next. So, not saying that what I do is perfect, but that is the way that I respond well to things. So seeing my feelings written out and really helps me check in on myself, and then figuring out the next steps kind of makes me feel at ease with the entire process. But I would like to point out that it's so much easier to do this when you're feeling down, but it's super important to be consistent and work through this process even on the good days.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Sam, because I find myself falling into that as well, where, I know how important it is to try to practice mindfulness when I am feeling down, because I want to get out of that spot. But then when I feel great, I think, oh, I'm good. I don't need to mess with that anymore. And so I'm so glad you mentioned the consistency.
So before I get into this question, we might lose Liza after she answers, because she also has class coming up. But I want to quickly mention that, we oftentimes think that self-care is just that extra thing that if we get to it, we get to it. So what are some quick things that you guys do to treat yourself during a stressful time, whether it's right before finals or in the middle of a semester? And how do you prioritize self-care for yourself?
So for me, during stressful times in the semester, biggest treat I give myself is usually some ice cream. That's my go-to, some Ben and Jerry's ice cream. I go hiking with friends. Anything to get me out of the house or the place I'm studying in is always really good. I love to make coffee at home and then just sit on my patio and listen to the sounds of nature, because it's just like calming, and it's like I don't bring my phone out there so that I can't be distracted. And then I just, like I said earlier, let myself take days to myself that have nothing to do with school, and I just like watch Netflix, or I also on those days like to limit the time on my phone so that I don't like feel bad for like not doing what I see other people doing. And I think that's one of the biggest self-care things I do. And sorry if you heard my cat, she just came in here, so.
Okay, well, you can't just say, here's my cat, and not show us. I feel like that's very unfair. See, self-care. I'm seeing a cat and now I'm happy. That's all
Yeah.
it takes.
Here's my cat. She doesn't like to be held, but she says hi.
Adorable. So I like animals, so quick form of self-care, I would always go to the animal shelter in DeKalb called Tails, and I would take out dogs or cats and sit in the empty rooms and play with them, until one day, I got one too, and then I stopped going. But Mom, you're not watching this. You don't know that. Um, and so for me, I'm a very creative person, but I'm also very logical. And my course load often entertains the logical side of me, forcing me to be creative in a very detail-orientated, focused, and straightforward kind of way, which is great. But in order to relax or indulge into self-care outside of my academics, I really focus on creative outlets. So I go to thrift stores and repurpose old furniture or clothing. I'd sew or work on graphic design projects, write creatively, or indulge in sweet treats like ice cream and cuddles with my pup.
Thanks, Sam. So as Azarette said, Liza had to run to class, so we're super appreciative of her taking the time to do this. So the final question before Azarette wraps everything up for us. So self-care, obviously, we've heard, helps you deal with the daily stresses of life, from academic pressures to interpersonal relationships to future plans and others. And, one of my pet peeves is when I hear people, primarily adults, talk about how students in college aren't in the real world, and that's always bugged me, because the stresses involved in college life are just so numerous, and I think we put a lot of expectations on you guys. So with that, Sam, you went through it, you're still going through it for your master's program. I'd like to hear what advice you have for maybe somebody just starting out in college this fall, or maybe they're returning to college after some time away. What advice would you have specifically for a college student looking to maybe develop a healthy set of self-care practices?
Yeah, so the most important thing is to just not put too much pressure on yourself. I know this is very cliche, as well as easier said than done, but finding out who you are, where you want to be, what relaxes you, or things that allow you to feel productive yet recharges you can take time. And being open to trying different things is very important, but also talk with someone who knows you or someone who doesn't know you, like a counselor, to get outside opinions if you're struggling. All you can do is keep trying. Like Quentin said, there's a lot that is involved with college. It's not just that your academics are harder or, maybe for some of you more easier, but you also have the other pressures of joining clubs, networking, making friends. How do you build your resume? You juggle a lot as a college student. And so just showing up for yourself every day would be the first step I would give you when trying to develop self-care practices. Because if you can promise your friends that you're going to do something and you do it, why can't you make that same commitment to yourself?
And so Liza, the student that she's like, I actually have my answer for the last question. So I'm going to read off what she shared. And she echoes really what Samantha just shared. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. She said that she feels like she's done this all of her life, and we live in a society that never lets us catch a break, but then tells us that we need to take care of ourselves, which is so true. You see it all the time. And I too, put myself in the situation where you're on social media and you're like, these people are doing these things, I should be doing this. So it's hard to put yourself first, but it's vital. She shares, you'll thank yourself later, and the more you start saying yes to you and your needs, the better you'll feel. So trust me, because that's what I had to do to get where I am today. I think that's very important, a really great way to wrap things up. So one thing that I wanted to share before letting Sam and Quentin go is that we are very fortunate at IVCC to have counselors that can assist with anything, whether it's a personal issue or just wanting to talk about what the future looks like in their academics. So something to know is that anytime you can give them a call at 815-224 0324 or 0361. Again, 224-0361 is another option to schedule something, and what that's under or how they communicate that it is a personal counseling assistance program. And so if you ever need that, whether it's a virtual over the phone or you do need to come in and talk to someone, that's something we want to let our students know. And with that, I want to just thank Samantha and Liza again for taking the time, and Quentin as well. Anything else that you guys want to add before we're done?
I'm going to let Samantha go ahead first.
Okay. Not much, just thank you for having me. And, you know, just to remind the students or prospective students who are, you know, going through COVID that there's no shame in getting help and talking to someone who is educated and have years of experience in the feelings that you're having. So if you need to go to a counselor, go.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what Sam just shared, and it's so true. And just know, you know, sometimes it's easy to feel alone, and just be aware that everybody else is struggling, and just be kind as much as you possibly can. And thanks to Azurette for putting together all these this self-care presentation and all the other alumni sharing knowledge presentations.
Wonderful, thank you. And before I forget, there's also a resource online that students have access to, and it's called You at IVCC. It's really, really cool. It's a student portal where you get to personalize it based on the needs that you're looking for. And there's more information sharing this right now. So you can watch this at your own time to get acclimated. But again, this is a really cool service, completely free to our students. You do have to create a login, like I had mentioned, but it's content that there's research behind it, and there's a reason why there's certain topics listed on there. So I hope you can make the time to check those out, and it's definitely better than Pinterest. So do yourself a favor and check it out. Thank you.